All right, welcome everyone. Roger, do you want to go ahead and get us kicked off?
Yes, thank you everyone for your time. I really appreciate you joining us today. I'm Roger Perlson. I'm Director of Business Development here at CSSA. As most of you have come to know, CSSA is a member-driven, partner-powered, and future-focused association. And through that, as we work with the service providers, our membership on the day-to-day basis, and through our member forums, there are certain hurdles that uh, each of you have come across through your deployments. And so what we do is we work with our partners to find solutions for that, to empower you to get over those hurdles and complete the deployments within the schedules and the technologies that you need. So, but it's not just providing a solution for today. Is it scalable? Will it adapt to your needs, to your customers' needs? I mean, it has to be very future, not proofed, but forward looking in the solutions. And we've done that today, I believe, with two of our partners, with Comtrend and Harmonic. The OpenPON, I think, really solves a lot of the issues that we're facing today. And I'm going to let AJ take it from there. AJ?
All right, thanks, Roger. Yeah, we're pretty excited about this. Obviously, this is something that Comtrend's been talking about for about 2 years. Roger was one of our earliest adopters of this. In fact, our largest customer we have jointly with CSSA already has over 3,200 ONTs deployed, and a number of others besides that. We actually just put out a case study on one of our newest customers, Terra Nova, and how this solution reduced their fiber costs by about 70%. So Roger knows me well. Many of you know me. I can be kind of the doom and gloom guy. I'm always the one because I handle our distributor relationships and making sure that hardware gets to the ISPs. I'm constantly looking at what the challenges are and what threats there are in the market. This technology, the greatest thing about it is the fact that it is an open solution. And on the next slide, you'll see just some of those bullet points, which is, being that it is an open solution, you're not locked into a single vendor. So it gives the ISP the control of the different parts of the system so that you as an ISP can choose, I like this vendor because they have the lowest cost. This vendor maybe has certain settings or features that I need, or, very important, what we've seen over the past few years, this vendor has inventory. Um, in the DSL world, in the cable world, where many of us have come from or have experience over the past decades, everything was standards based. DSL, you had your DSLAM, so you could have whatever DSLAM, whatever CPE. Cable world, CMTS, same type of thing with DOCSIS. Somehow in this fiber world and the PON specifically, it came out initially with this closed end-to-end closed single vendor. And I can tell you what I saw when the pandemic hit really hard was getting calls from a number of service providers, a number of distributors saying that, for lack of a $40 ONT, uh, which was in a locked ecosystem from one of those legacy providers, service providers were stuck not being able to deploy fiber right at the exact moment when everyone was going home and signing up for, broadband service or increasing their broadband service at their house because they needed to work from home during the pandemic. Now that was, of course, hopefully a once in a century thing. But there's a lot of things, and I think we have a tendency to forget some of the multiple things that affect our business because we get through them and then we go back to doing business as usual. Something else comes up, another challenge, business as usual. So on the next slide just shows a few of the many things that, we've seen in the past. Um, one big one that I'm very aware of because I handle our distributor relationships are the ports. So over the last 10 years, we've had three major port strikes. 40% of the goods come through here, Long Beach, Los Angeles. And it's important to, from a service provider aspect, if there is a port strike, if the West Coast ports are blocked, if the East Coast ports are blocked, to have the ability to choose another piece of the puzzle so that you can continue to deploy products. So, those are things that are going to continue to happen. especially as more and more automation comes online at the port complexes and the port workers kind of fight back against that. That's a big thing to be aware of. Another one, so that's again, the last 10 years, we've had three port strikes. We've had one pandemic, three port strikes. We've had component issues. We're hearing a lot about the iPhone today and Apple and how there's 1,600 different components that go into a single iPhone. Um, all of our products are like that. We don't necessarily have on an ONT 1,600 pieces that go into production of that device, but there's a lot of different components that come from different factories in different regions. They all need to get shipped to a single area, get there at the same time so that those products can come off of the factory floor and then shipped to where they're needed. If I can bring you back to something that maybe we've all forgotten with the chaos that has gone over the past few years, was the MLCC capacitor issue. So MLCC back in 2017, before pandemic, before tariffs, that was a little capacitor that's in every electronic piece of equipment. The price on that component spiked. To give you an example, or well, to tell you why, it's because we are all buying more things that have more of these components in it, from Ring cameras to cars. In 2000, a car had about 1,000 MLCCs in it. Today, it's not uncommon for a car to have 20,000 MLCCs in it. And in 2000, none of us had Ring cameras. We didn't have Alexas. We didn't have all these things that we have today. So the price on that single component spiked. The automotive industry, which is willing to pay a lot more for MLCCs than, say, consumer electronics, started pulling up all those MLCCs. What we all saw was increase in price, decrease in supply, and lead times that spiked to 52 weeks. Again, we may not remember this because so much has happened over the past few years, but as this globalized society, a lot more pressure gets on that. These are the kind of things that we might see more and more. Again, very important as a service provider to be able to pivot from one vendor to another vendor because this vendor has supply. This vendor has a product I need. And this OpenPON solution allows you to do that. Other things to consider, man-made natural disasters, whether it's an earthquake, tsunami, hopefully we never see China, Taiwan heat up. But those kind of things can affect supply. If your vendor is manufacturing in an area that's affected by a large earthquake, tsunami hits a port complex or something like that, you're going to need the ability to pivot. Also, other things we've seen recently, the US government becoming more of an activist government. So we have the tariffs that we're all very, very aware of. We have other things like the Routers Act, which has passed the US House of Representatives and is currently under consideration with the Senate. That's banning specific companies that have ties to the Chinese government. So we've already seen Huawei and ZTE, sidelined. They have their eyes on TP-Link right now. We'll see how that plays out. But the point being, as the government is pushing certain initiatives, like, we want to make sure manufacturers are sourcing components from this location or manufacturing in this area or do not have ties to this government. You don't want to be in a scenario where the company that you work with, the company that your whole deployments depend upon, are on the wrong side of the ledger. And I mean, as we've seen today, it's even companies like Apple that they're targeting. So it's, not necessarily just these Chinese companies that are being targeted. It is whatever the initiative is that the US government is trying to push. So that's why companies like Comtrend, other companies have the built in America. So we've moved some of our ONTs to be built in America if that's something that a service provider needs. And then the last thing I'll touch on before I pass it over to he is the DZS zone chapter 7. So we saw that almost no notification. DZS went chapter 7. That's not a chapter 11 reorg. That's complete liquidation. Now, since then, they are trying to reconstitute under the zone name, but in the interim, for the last 3 or 4 months, they've lost a lot of talent and they've lost a lot of credibility. So as a service provider, that amongst all these other things should be a wake-up call that, depending on a single vendor for all of my deployments can put a lot of my business at risk. So, we are very, very excited to be in this open architecture solution. Comtrend has always pushed the best of breed open architecture, whether it's from our ACS to products like this. We see this as the future. We see this as the best way for our customer base, which is really kind of tier, 2 and below rural ISPs to make sure to secure their business. So that's kind of my spiel. Again, my doom and gloom, but the big goal is to keep things running and keep things working as well as possible for the service provider. And with that, the big thing is now going to be about the technology, which he is going to talk about.
Anthony, we're all here for you. You don't have to suffer alone. All right. Pick up a phone, call a friend.
Very good.
Thanks for that, everybody. My name is He-Huyen. It's pronounced H-Y, but I promise you is spelled H-Y, but it's pronounced he like the pronoun. And my role here with Harmonic is VP of Fiber Products, and I'm in charge of our fiber business strategy and our fiber product strategy. So thanks for joining us today and giving us this opportunity to speak with you. I'm going to start off by sharing a little bit about who we are. So in case you're not familiar with Harmonic, we can give you a little overview on that. But then want to focus on how this open ecosystem can, we believe, truly benefit you as the operator and ultimately your customers as well. And next, we'll show you a little bit more about the type of products that we have within our portfolio that can help enable that. So let's jump into it. So this is Harmonic at a glance. We have both a broadband as well as a video business unit that are effectively kind of focused on those respective areas. Obviously, I'm within the broadband business unit. Our 2024 revenues were about 670 million, and our market capitalization is a little over $1 billion. We're headquartered in Silicon Valley, San Jose, California, to be specific. We are known for being a leader in innovating the cloud native solutions for our platforms. And we have market leading customers that are all around the world. Show you some quick racing stripes. On the left are just a cross section of some of our customers that we work with, at least the ones that are happy to have us show their logo. We have about 235,000 managed remote devices. These are called edge devices, supporting about 33 million CPE today. And we've been proud of having our technology be recognized. So that's an Emmy Award silhouette because we have actually won Emmy Awards. So I didn't just pluck a random award-looking picture and put it on here. So that's Harmonic in a quick glance. Next, I'm going to go into a bit of, if you indulge me, infomercial mode for a moment, but I promise it won't be long. When we think about OpenPON and OpenONT world, along with the things that Harmonic believe is better and best for you and operator and customers, we think about it in these terms, right? When we sum it up, we think we can allow you to accelerate your PON networks and ultimately accelerate your revenues. We focus on helping you minimize the total cost of ownership, maximize your operational flexibility, and then ultimately accelerate your time to revenue. Today, we'll talk a little bit more into each of these areas, but we endeavor to help you reduce your CapEx, right? So you can spend less to buy it up front and then also less to deploy because of the flexibility. We want to help you reduce your OpEx as well. It should be products that are less for you to operate and cost you less to maintain, which ultimately results in the more that you buy, the more that you get to save. And by buy, I mean buying into this open philosophy. We help you maximize your operational flexibility. You'll see how we support any kind of technology to give you a greater diversity of your tool belt. We have support for any form factor so that you can almost surgically select the best solution for the use case you're addressing. We'll support any CPE, so we give you vendor freedom, so you can buy from folks like Comtrend, and for all the reasons that Anthony discussed earlier. And our products are meant to be future ready so that it can evolve with you. With all this type of flexibility, it allows you to unlock your network from a closed uh, bookended ecosystem, which also ultimately allows you to unlock your operations too. And finally, we'll talk about how we can accelerate your time to revenue, because these tools and this openness allows you to deploy faster. It'll allow you to reach more and new customers, because you may be able to capture segments that you otherwise can't justify doing today. It'll keep your customers happier, and if needed, our companies can give you turnkey professional services too, with our efforts together, which culminates to, guess what? The more you buy, the more you make. That's my infomercial. Call now and shipping handling is waived. Just kidding. I'm sure there's a charge for that. Okay, let's jump into it. So this is a high-level diagram of how Harmonic approaches our architecture. This top layer here with a cloud, this represents what we call our COS platform. It runs native, cloud native. It runs on off-the-shelf servers, or it can be hosted. It takes care of all the management, the provisioning, the monitoring, analytics, etc. All of that is within that platform. We support any technology, and by any technology, I mean at the same time, once you install that platform, we support PON technologies and DOCSIS all at the same time. When it comes to PON, you see that we will support GPON, 10 gig EPON, XGS PON, 25 GS PON, and any kind of future PONs that they come down the pike we'll be a part of. But we're agnostic to the vendor. You can have vendor A, B, C, D, E, and whatever it is that you need. You have the opportunity to pick the best of breed, and what you can have access to. And finally, we also support cable modems with the DOCSIS solution too, if you have any use cases where that's relevant. Let's double click a little bit more about the open ONT approach and what that means. These are numbers, meaning pricing that is not from me, but from a leading global consulting analyst firm that tracks all this data. And caveat, this excludes data from China, because when you include the Chinese data, it washes away a lot of the statistics for the rest of the world. So this is world minus China. The average selling price, the global ASP for a 10 gig PON port is roughly around $800 a port. Again, global. So this includes lower ARPU parts of the world as well. But for this, $800. When you look at the average selling price for ONTs from folks like KLX, Atran, DZS, Nokia, these bookended solutions, these vendor lock solutions, again, the data says it is about $200 as the global ASP. So let's pretend you have one PON port and you use a 32 PON split. That's 32 ONTs for every PON port. So you're spending $3,200 to $6,400 on your CPE, providing that range there. Now, versus if you went with the open ONT philosophy, and such as with Harmonic and with Comtrend as the CPE vendor, the data on the global ASP says is about $100 a pop. I think that's actually probably being generous in terms of how much it is. I think the trend is that you can probably quite easily get a bridge-only XGS PON ONT for well under $100 a pop now. But I wanted to be true to pulling the data direct from the source. When you do the math, what this really means is that for every you save $2 to $4 for every buck that you spend with an open ONT approach, simply on the ONT piece of it alone. You can also have a cap and grow strategy, right? Because in my case, I'm willing to integrate with your existing brownfield ONTs that are already deployed. Well, those can remain untouched. and you continue to support those using a cap and grow strategy. Ultimately, we go back to the original theme of the more you buy, the more you save. This is a key part of why OpenPON is fantastic for you. Not to mention all of the other aspects that Anthony mentioned. So look, we will allow you to bring your own ONT, like I said, avoid CPE vendor lock, get competitive pricing, quickly adopt to new technologies because you get to just pick best of breed and not be limited to only the options that are provided you by one vendor. Harmonic's approach to this is we have interop facilities throughout the world. That includes here in Silicon Valley and several other R&D locations around the world. We have some racing tracks here to give you examples of ONT vendors that we have worked with. In the cases of the vendor lock solutions, oftentimes we are making it work, right? Regardless of their willingness to help or not. And we also don't care about the silicon. It could be Broadcom, Cortina, MaxLinear, Iroha, whatever it may be. It's all good with us. Now, let's talk about some of the Comtrend ONT lineup that's available to you. Anthony, toss it to you.
Yep. So this is our current lineup as well as roadmap. We have our legacy ONTs there on the right, 4283, 4286, which we're still selling, 2.5 and 10 gig, and with voice ports on the 2.5. These ones on the left here, these ones are kind of our next gen units, and these are the ones that also we can do build in America. So obviously, there's a price difference there, but if that is something that's important to you as a service provider, come to us and we can talk about, lead times and pricing and all that kind of stuff. But, number of these units on the shelf today, 4283, 4286, 4361. And I'm sorry, and the SFP version, the 4606. And then those last two on the right, that GRG 4355, that's an all-in-one device with Wi-Fi 7 built in. And then the 4366 outdoor with VoIP. Go ahead, He.
Fantastic. Well, so look, it's great that we can support the ONTs of choice and be open and flexible, but recognize that all of that may not matter unless you have reliability. And for us, reliability at Harmonic is something that we track meticulously, and we consistently have 5 nines of reliability and uptime globally across all of our deployments. So in Q1 through Q4 of last year, this is the overall average. So for every issue involved, we're still 5 nines. And then if we subtract out the non-harmonic faulting issues, we're still 5 nines, but slightly better. So 0.9996 versus 0.9992. How do we keep track of this information? It's because that with our platform, we have a bunch of analytics that you have access to. So we get to very easily calculate this information regularly. Again, because we have all of that data readily available through our platform for monitoring management. The formula for calculating uptime is stupid easy. We have this many customers' devices deployed. How many minutes uptime was there possible? How many minutes uptime was there actually? Divide them out, and you get a percentage. So we have consistently performed at 5 nines plus reliability, including not the issues not related to us when people are running our platform. Okay, talked about flexibility in terms of any form factor, any deployments. Well, we have form factors for our products that can be deployed in head ends, on shelves, outdoor cabinets, as well as outdoor enclosures. For hubs and cabinets, we have shelf-based solutions that can go up to 48 10 gig PONs in a 1 RU space, so very high density. We have node form factors that are fully enclosed, and you just deploy them on strands, poles, in some cases walls, or even cabinets too. Our large nodes can support up to 16 10-gig PONs in one node. Our compact nodes can support up to 8 10-gig PONs in one node. And so you can see here we have almost industry-leading densities on the high density end. But we also have uniquely, at the same time, surgical level of density with our SFP Plus pluggable OLT. So you can surgically choose to just plug in one PON port at a time where it makes sense. This eliminates the need to be committed to a large chassis or large shelf, no matter what, right? You have flexibility to surgically select what's best for your use case. Now, let's go over some of the deployment scenarios that we can support with the short portfolio. Because that our platform naturally supports both PON and DOCSIS, you have the option, if it matters, within, in this case, starting with a node, to support both DOCSIS and PON at the same time. And in this case, this would be a use case where you're adding one of our PON modules that support 8 PON ports. I'm using the highest split, 128 in my assumption, but that can support up to 1,000 fiber subs, anywhere from 20 to 60,000 meters away. Now, what if you wanted to do more? Sure. This here I'm showing that you can do a couple of things. One, you're going to note that's just all fiber, so 16 PON ports can support up to 2,000 subs. But if you have a node strategy at all, particularly in rural areas where it may not be cost effective to pull permits, build cabinets, or build a hub site, this could be ideal for you. But you can daisy chain. So if you have a node out here in one location, you can actually daisy chain it because that our modules have built-in switches, and you can daisy chain it down up to 80 kilometers if you use long-range optics, and hang another node right off of that, and off you go. You don't have to rebuild all that mid-mile infrastructure. Now, what if you want to take a shelf approach? Sure. I'm showing a switch that's sold by Harmonic Wharf, but it's called the Wharf, but it could be pretty much any switch with SFP pluses that you have out there for the most part. If you have existing switches out there, like a top of rack switch, for example, and you want to add some more PON ports to it, you can add as little as one port at a time with our thin pluggable micro OLT. Now, in this use case, I have a device that has a switch that has 24 1025 gig ports. So you can have up to 24 PON ports if you want, which supports up to 3,000 subs. But okay, what if you know that this location is going to get a little more dense and you want to have more PON ports? We have a product called Peer, and the Peer is right down here. You can put that in that location. I'm showing a cabinet, but this very well can just be in your CO and in your head-end, whatever location that you want. But it's environmentally hardened. That's why it can be in an outdoor cabinet. But this gives you 32 PON ports in just this shelf in one RU. And you add it up with the 24 up there, you can support up to 6,000 subs in just 2 RUs of space. Earlier I mentioned you can daisy chain a node off of a node. Well, you can daisy chain a node off of this cabinet solution as well. Again, if you're trying to reach out to more rural areas, this may be faster time to market and more cost effective for you to get deployed. But you can daisy chain a node, and in this case, I'm showing you a compact node, right? Again, presumably because you're going somewhere that is lower density. And that can support up to 1,000 subs with 8 PON ports. Let me show you here. We had to work with a customer that wanted to have it in a cabinet that was pole mountable, and battery backups and all, right? We gave them a solution working in this case with Clearfield, and one of the advantages was they needed the extended battery backup time without having to spend a lot of money on very large batteries. Our products have industry-leading power and space. In many cases, half the power utilization of the traditional OLTs are out there. And we were putting this cabinet. Let me play a little video. This is literally in one of our lab spaces when I filmed this. But if you take a look, So it's a relatively smaller cabinet once you have perspective with the hand. And in there's some fiber splitters, DC power rectifiers, our pure OLT, and a switch, a warp switch in there. And they all kind of fit nicely into this small cabinet. We're hanging off of it our Oyster compact node, if you want to do that, and there you go. Again, this is an example of something that's fully, it's lightweight enough and small enough that can be fully mounted up on a pole. Now, this is maybe something more of what is typical, high density deployments. So how do we do that? No problem. I'm showing an example where here in 7 RUs of space, we have 6 of our pure OLTs, and then we have a aggregation switch on top. This will support 192 10 gig pods and up to 24,000 subs in 7 RUs of space. What does that look like inside of a potential cabinet? A heck of a lot like this. So all of that with space to spare in case you want to expand with time. I have been talking about industry leading for power and space. So what does that actually look like in some numbers? Well, here you go. I'm including the top of rack switch in my calculations when I say 7 RUs, but what's pictured here, 192 PON ports, 24,000 subs, averages out to 27 PON ports for each RU. And the total watts is 1,160 watts. That works out to about 6 watts per PON port. Again, how does this compare to a lot of what's out there in the traditionally deployed OLT solutions? This is roughly half, or in some cases, less than half of the amount of power that we have to use. Okay, now I've talked about 10 gig PON. Now, this obviously isn't limited 10 gig PON. You can support GPON if you want on the same platform. You can support combo PON too, if that's what you want. But what about the very, what comes beyond 10 gig? I will simply, for this conversation, because we're not really having a future technologies conversation, we'll share that we're bringing 25 GS PON support to our portfolio this year as well. So we talked about the pluggable that does 10 gig. We're going to come out with a Fin 2 that's a pluggable that does 25 gig. And if you have switches that are 10, 25 gig ready to go, then you can selectively choose to plug in a 25 GS PON versus 10 gig PON as you need. Jetty 2 is the name of our hardened remote switch module that goes into nodes. It is a 1025 gig switch. So similarly, you can choose to put in 10 gig PON ports or 25 gig PON ports. This is for our pluggable based technology. You can selectively only put in, 1 or 2 25 gig PON ports because presumably not all of your customers kind of need that super high speed. So what do? Well, to simplify the operation so you don't have to have unique drops or multiple drops at every location, you can coexist them with a coexistence element, which combines the 25 gig across 1 or more of the 10 gig PON ports. Once you get to the home or the premise, you get to choose if you're giving them 10 gig speeds or 25 gig speeds based on the ONT that you install and plug into. So it keeps the operations simple and it gives you a graceful, seamless migration strategy. With that, I say thank you to those that are attending.
Thanks. And then we did receive a number of questions throughout, so let's go ahead and address some of those. The first was asking, how would you go about upgrading from existing PON architecture, for example, GPON, XGS PON, 2550, without interrupting existing traffic?
That's a good question. So there's several approaches to it. I'll start with the kind of GPON to XGS PON. One approach that people have taken is you can upgrade the PON port, the OLT PON port, from say just a GPON to a combo PON port. The moment you upgrade it to a combo PON port with a combo PON optic, then that exact same drop to the end user's home will carry both GPON and XGS PON. At that point, you get to take a graceful cap and grow strategy. Customers who have GPON ONTs continue to be happy, hunky dory. New customers that want XGS PON, you give them an XGS PON ONT. That GPON customer, if for whatever reason they want to upgrade, churn prevention, higher speeds, etc. You just swap out the ONT from a GPON ONT to a XGS PON ONT, and off you go. That is the migration strategy that you can take if you use a combo PON optic. Another version of that strategy is to keep your GPON OLT where it may be, and next to it you add a XGS PON OLT. So now you have dedicated GPON and XGS PON ports, and you use what's called a coexistence element that you can add to it. And this coexistence element effectively has built-in thin film filters, and it will mux together your GPON and XGS PON ports down into a single fiber down your ODN and down the drops to your customer. And you can do the exact same strategy of when you provide what ONT for what technology, and is a graceful migration. So those are examples of going from GPON to XGS PON. Everything I just said would also apply if you were to go to a next-gen technology like 25 GS PON. Right, you can have coexistence, single drop to the customer, graceful cap and grow strategy as needed based on the ONT that you deploy out there.
Nice, thank you. Let's see. There's also a question, how difficult is it to transition a current closed system to potentially one of these OpenPON systems?
That's a great question, right? So there's a reason why Harmonic has several ONT interop labs and research facilities scattered across the world. For devices that, we have a list, right, that we've done before, off you go. If you happen to deploy those devices that we've already previously certified interopted, very easy because it's already done. For devices that are new to us, usually there's kind of two ways about it. For what we like to term the friendlies, Comtrend would be a friendly, by the way. Then we work hand in hand with the ONT provider, and the interop goes pretty smoothly. So that's, it just takes a little bit of time, but we know how to do it, and we're working hand in hand. We get it interrupted, and we consistently, work to qualify it, support it, test it on an ongoing basis. The tougher part is usually in my terms, the unfriendly vendors, the ones that actively have a vested interest in keeping ecosystems closed, regardless of how much, depending on who they are, publicly they talk about being involved in, boards and forums and desire to be open. It just doesn't. It's not true for what their bottom line is driven on. In those cases, it's harder. And the way that we do that is we actually will, so to speak, reverse engineer it, right? We'll do PON analyzers, and we'll see the traffic, and we'll reverse engineer it and make it work with our OLTs. That takes a little bit longer of time, but it's just a matter of time, but it gets done. Once that part is done, the transition for you is actually relatively easy. You can choose to completely forklift the vendor locked OLT and put in Harmonic's OLT, and then reconnect all the fibers. In that case, all of your existing brownfield ONTs will continue to work because we've integrated with it, and you can do a cap and grow strategy with, say, Comtrend's ONTs for all your new installs and any kind of upgrades and churn that you would like. The alternative will be to, again, that side-by-side strategy of keeping your OOLT and then putting a Harmonic OLT, and you do a coexistence down to that customer. Typically, with most of our customers, they usually have a reason to upgrade and start moving away from the legacy vendor locked solution that they have, and they simply put in our OLT, and we do interop for them, and they take a cap and grow strategy.
Great, thank you. The next question is asking how the harmonic OLT compares to the Tibit solution.
Oh, great question. Full disclosure, Harmonic's OLTs have actually, we work with multiple PON silicon vendors. You saw a number of examples where we showed the pluggable. That is from Tibit, which is now Sienna. So we purchased the plugs from Sienna, formerly Tibit. But we strip out all of the software and we use it literally just as silicon, and we put on all of the harmonic software management on top of that. So the hardware is the same, but we have greater flexibility, and everything is managed through the award-winning COS core platform. We also have Broadcom-based solutions, like our peer shelf that have the 32 ports. We have certain node modules that are also Broadcom based, right? So those are completely unrelated to anything from Sienna or Tibit, but would give you that vendor diversity by having multiple silicon vendors and therefore multiple platform options available to you.
Nice. And then it looks like we're coming up on time, so let's do one more. Somebody asked, do you believe combo XGS 2550 ports will be applicable moving forward?
Do I believe combo 25 and 50 ports be moving forward? Is that the question?
Yeah.
So yes, I do think that they will be applicable. And there was a question earlier about, how do you migrate into coexistence? I think that it's just inevitable because it wouldn't be, I wouldn't expect as you introduce these higher speed technologies that you would have, 25, 50, and not meant, it wasn't asked in the question, but I'll throw in 100 gig. I think 100 gig is for another webinar, probably where things are going to end up instead. You're not going to have those to every single home for a long, long time, right? So it doesn't make sense to upgrade every single port to that very high speed. So being able to coexist and have this quote unquote combo approach, I think will be quintessential.
Great. It does look like somebody asked if we'll be sharing the presentation. So just so you guys know, we'll send out an email to everybody with the recording so you can refer back to this, and also include our contact information if you guys are interested in learning more. With that, we'll wrap up the Q&A. Roger, did you want to close us out?
Again, I just want to emphasize how much we appreciate your time. It's just very valuable, and that you would spend it with us to discuss these technologies. It's not lost, and we appreciate that. Thank you to our friends at Harmonic and Comtrend for sharing this with us. Reach out, but we'll be following up as well. If you have any additional questions, you should have our contact information. If not, I will be touching you personally. But again, thank you. Just want to thank everybody for attending.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Take care.